I'll just. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Body Lock. It's your man Ant Walker here for the UFC 254 post-fight show. I'm joined by some familiar faces here. We got Pat OJ, we've got Drake Riggs, and we got the homie Matt Wells. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Very nice to have one of these post-fight shows with sunlight still a factor here. We just witnessed Khabib Nurmagomedov submit Justin Gaethje in the second round. A whole lot to unpack about this fight. I mean, we will talk about the X's and O's. We will talk about technically what we saw and how the fight played out. But I think the most important thing that we can acknowledge right here is that Khabib Nurmagomedov, the UFC lightweight champion, retired immediately after the fight, citing, of course, mourning the loss of his father and not wanting to carry his career on without his longtime coach and paternal figure nearby to help guide him. He leaves the UFC lightweight championship behind. Fellas, what is your immediate reaction to this? What was the first thing you thought when Khabib took that mic and said what he said about giving up the sport?
Oh, man. I guess I'll take this first, man. I immediately started saying, oh no, when he was taking 10 minutes to take his gloves off, because you knew he was waiting that long for a reason. So I was like, oh man, he's really going to retire. And then the fact that they couldn't get the tape off just really like drug it out. It's like, oh man, he's going to say he's going to retire now. And, you know, all week long, we were talking about who's going to be next to get to 30-0, because that's what the number that he was talking about he wanted to get. And then all of a sudden he throws us a curveball. He's like, nope, this is my last one. And it's so unfortunate, man, because Khabib he's really hitting his stride off of the back of the fame of beating Conor on that huge stage. Like, his name is just elevated more and more and more. More people starting to talk about him. And to go out there and dominate Justin Gaethje like he did, and then to say he's retired, it just kind of leaves us like wanting more. But, you know, Khabib's a different type of guy, man. So it's unfortunate, but it's also well-deserved. If he wants to ride off in the sunset right now, considering everything that's gone on in his personal life, losing his father, I mean, how can you really argue with it, you know?
Definitely excellent points there. Pat, I'll throw this one to you. And piggybacking off of what Matt said here, do you think that this is going to stick? I mean, MMA retirements have kind of become a joke within themselves. I mean, before we went on air, was joking with Matt about people retiring in between training camps. But this, coming from Khabib Nurmagomedov, do you believe it? Do you think that we will see him again in the cage?
That's a tough one. You know, it's one of those things where, as you guys know, I recorded a Fight Business podcast this week. The audio just was trash, so we had to scrap it. But a big question that I asked was, who would the promotion prefer win in this fight? Would they prefer Gaethje or Khabib? And I said it was basically a toss-up, but they'd probably prefer Gaethje because Khabib has said multiple times it's all about legacy. It's all about his career. It's not about money. You can't entice Khabib with millions of dollars or with a particular opponent unless, you know, other than GSP, that's the only other person he's talked about since, you know, in the entire lead up to this fight. And it becomes one of those things where I think if they got the GSP deal done after there's been enough separation from, you know, grieving of his father, which obviously the emotions came out in the cage today, completely understandable. You know, he's very emotional. He's making that call. I think unless they offer him GSP and he's had enough time away where he really thinks it makes sense for him to do a legacy, maybe he unretires, but he's not some of these guys that are retiring and then coming back out of retirement, you know, 3 months later, or coming back for the right price, right? I mean, how many times has McGregor retired? We saw Stefan Struve. He's retired before. He's already back in the cage. You know, it seems to be a problem, as you mentioned, in MMA where they retire and then after about 6 months to a year, they say, you know what? I'm doing well in training and just having fun. I think I can get back in there again. I don't see that with Khabib. I think this is it for him unless they get the GSP deal done, and even then it's a long shot. I would be shocked to see him back in the cage anytime soon, if ever.
Drake, does the GSP deal get done? Will George St. Pierre be the exception to the rule, and we see some sort of like massive super fight between the two dominant champions?
I would love to see it, of course. This whole moment here of Habib retiring and everything. It's sad for two reasons. Obviously, the personal side on things with him and everything, but then from a competitive standpoint, you're like, God damn, this guy is so amazing. He's only getting better. Was beating Gaethje without using his main weapon to get there, his wrestling, and then finish it off on the ground, of course. But like, man, it just makes you want to see more. Like Matt said, I mean, when you go out on top, that's an incredible thing. So, I mean, props to him for being able to do that. And I think that it will be the last time. I would say the GSP fight is absolutely the only thing that would bring him back. If it happens, it won't be anytime soon. I think that he is a guy who, yeah, it just doesn't really matter to him. He's done it all already. He's seen it, been there, done that. Been fighting, competing his entire life. And this is now a promise that he's making to his family, his last parent, I think that's a very serious thing to him. There's no indication that it isn't at this point, from what we've seen and know about him. And imagining that he would break that, or even try to like beg his mother to be like, so what or even talk about it, like, well, what do you think about getting back in there like 2 years from now or whatever? And then even then, by that time, GSP is going to be even older and like probably less likely to want to come back in the first place. So, yeah, I don't see. I think the chance is very, very slim now, and Habib will definitely stick to his guns on this. He doesn't strike me as a guy that would jokes around about anything really, but of course we've seen him jokey with like DC and stuff like that. But in terms of serious competition stuff, he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy.
So before we go into the technical aspects about this, two things I want to throw out there. First, I think we would be foolish to not acknowledge how sultry Drake's voice sounds. Just really bassy, just really, it just feels very primal. I'm moved right now. But also, just throw this out there, fellas: is Khabib the greatest lightweight that we've seen in the sport's history? I think we can ask that question now, considering what the last portion of his resume looks like. But fellas, open floor. Is he the GOAT?
Absolutely.
So, Matt, you go, Matt.
I'm going to say absolutely, because everybody was hoping that Justin Gaethje would show up and be that guy to beat Khabib. We were all saying in our pre-fight videos that he has the right amount of skills, the right amount of crazy to just stand in the fire with him and create all sorts of problems for Khabib. Khabib went in there and shut all that shit down like it was nothing. The forward pressure, just relentless. Like, he was eating shots and still coming forward. He was like, "Oh, that's all you got? I'm still in your face. What you gonna do?" And it looked like Gaethje ran a marathon after the first round. It was ridiculous. And now we've just seen the scorecards come out from the first round. 2 judges scored that first round for Gaethje. Like, what? Like, what were they watching? But anyways, yes, Khabib is the GOAT. Hands down. I mean, every time somebody stepped up that thought that was going to give him problems, he was just like, nah, like, you don't belong in this cage with me, and I'm going to prove it to you every single time. I'm going to talk to people outside of the cage while I'm beating your ass like he did to Michael Johnson. Like, that's just different, man. We just don't see that from anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's hands down he has to be the lightweight GOAT. It just, no other name really comes to mind. I mean, yeah, you have the legacy of BJ Penn. You've got I think a slept-on candidate for this would be Eddie Alvarez, but of course his lightweight greatness mostly comes outside of the UFC, and for business reasons, that's kind of a separate story. But you look overall picture, and including the level of stardom that he's been able to reach. We're talking about a guy who is truly a global sports superstar beyond just the scope of our sport. He is beyond that, and we may not feel that necessarily in North America. But as I've said before on this channel, I mean, he is the most followed athlete of Russian origin on Instagram. So that says a lot about his popularity outside of just the general world of mixed martial arts. But gentlemen, let's get into the X's and O's about this. My initial thoughts when this matchup was made was that we would learn very quickly who was going to win. Either one, Khabib Nurmagomedov would put the pressure on Gaethje, keep him on the back foot, take him down, brutalize him, maybe submit him, or that takedown attempt would get stuffed. Gaethje would crack him in the head a few times, crack his leg, and then we'd see something that we hadn't seen before. If we saw Khabib take a back step, then we knew something different was happening. Looks like the former came true. Khabib, excellent use of pressure. Quite honestly, I thought Gaethje was gassing out rapidly, more rapidly than we had ever seen him. By the middle of the first round, he looked to be gasping for air and desperately trying to run away or trying to circle out, do something to buy some time and buy some space. He even fought with a certain level of distance that we're not used to seeing from him. So any takeaways that you have as far as technique goes, how this fight played out?
I mean, yeah, I think the pressure was really something that Gaethje, I mean, clearly didn't see him as ready for as he needed to be, and it really affected his game plan for the most part. I mean, he was still able to rattle off leg kicks from the back foot, which was very impressive, able to do so in stuff, minor takedowns or clinch attempts that Khabib was putting on him. But yeah, just really in the beginning, the first minute, they were kind of feeling it out, playing the chess match, waiting, see who's going to make the first move. But ultimately, Khabib's pressure just kind of, right once he got comfortable and just started going full speed, it was like, okay, Gaethje's going to have to land something on the defensive, essentially. And he did land some good shots, but obviously it really threw him off, I think, a lot more than maybe he could have planned for, because that's a unique level of relentlessness that Khabib puts on you. And I don't think anybody can prepare for that. So it was just one of those things where he had to get lucky after Khabib decided to step on the gas.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And before I get into it, again, if you're watching this, like, subscribe. Shout out to Abdella, James, Matthew Graham saying Jens Pulver is the real lightweight gold. That's a take we could go down in a little bit, because that's an interesting call. But it's one of those things I never would have ever guessed. If you had told me that Khabib was going to outstrike Gaethje, I would have said, you're crazy. Like, yeah, he's going to land a couple strikes, sure. He's going to, go for takedowns, all that. But to outstrike him, and as both, you, Ant, and Drake said, Gaethje looked so gassed after one round. Just looked, dead tired. He was taking heavy breaths through the end of that round. And Khabib looked a little tired, maybe took one deep breath, but that pressure was relentless. And Gaethje didn't know what to do. I did not expect that. I expected the end where once, Gaethje is off his back, which he's never really had to fight off his back before. I knew that was going to be deep waters for him, where he was going to have to scramble. And unless he had some magic, rabbit out of a hat that we hadn't seen before, I expected it to kind of end in a submission or ground and pound, something of that nature. But just the stand-up, I did not see that coming. It seems like Nurmagomedov has gotten better and better at his stand-up and setting up the takedowns and getting people to the ground that way. He was able to stand up very long, two massive shots from Gaethje that just knocked Khabib's head back and just walked through him like they were nothing. It's one of those things. It is sad that we're not going to see Nurmagomedov still in there and continuing to challenge people and seeing how he progresses from here on out. Because, again, we've all kind of agreed he's probably really retired. But his evolution as a fighter is insane. And who knows if he had decided, I want to be active, I want to keep going, who knows what he would look like in the next even 2 or 3 years. It's unreal.
For all that we can say about what happened from a technical standpoint in that fight, one thing that we didn't consider, that I think most people didn't consider as a possibility, did happen. And we're going to point to a comment on the YouTube chat here from the one that got away. It says, Gaethje looks scared to actually engage. Never seen him like that. That is a possibility that we didn't really seem to consider. We know that Khabib puts pressure on people. We know he stays in your face. We know his sort of game plan is going to make a striker hesitant to unleash. But one thing we have never seen from Gaethje is hesitance. We've never seen him hold back. We've never seen him really take a pause and just kind of have to figure out what to do next. It's always been even if it was to his detriment, as we saw against Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. He's someone who always has moved forward with some level of purpose. Even the new improved version of Gaethje that had a little more patience against Edson Barboza and had more patience against Donald Cerrone and better shot selection was still very methodical, was still very confident in what he was doing. We did not see that today. Matt Wells, not Matt Graham, who's in the chat, but Matt Wells. I know you are, one of the MMA journalists who does actually hit the mats and train. Can you add a little nugget of wisdom as what you saw from the X's and O's here tonight or this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to really look at what was said in between after the first round when Trevor Whitman sat him down and was like, you have to slow down. Because it looked like everything Gaethje was doing was overcompensating. Like he was trying to do too much in terms of like getting out of the way. He was reacting to literally every single thing that Khabib was doing. And that was wearing him out because not only was he just constantly circling around the cage, trying to get out of the way, like preemptively, like getting ready for a shot coming out from a mile away. Like he was just constantly moving and he looked nervous and he was just awkward. And I think part of that comes into play when it's like you're kind of over preparing for a guy like Khabib because you expect the takedown to come out of nowhere, right? And that's like you guys have said, that's what makes his striking look so much better because it's that constant fear of the takedown. It's that constant fear of knowing that once I get taken down by this guy, I'm not getting back up for the rest of the round. So when you have that in the back of your mind constantly and you're worried about getting hit, like as you guys also said, more volume with the strikes than we've ever really seen from Khabib before. And he was landing them really well too. Just all the things that were going in Gaethje's mind. Like I couldn't imagine, like he was just kind of killing himself, shooting himself in the foot by like overthinking everything. I think if he just kind of went out there a little bit more loose, a little bit more fluid in his movement and not worried about every single moment. And that's kind of weird to say in about a fight because, if you blink at the wrong time, you could get caught with a strike. But this was different. It was very different. And it's hard to pinpoint the reason that it was this way. But I mean, I don't know if something happened in the lead up for him in terms of preparation. Like, was he nervous about how this was going to play out? Did he really not think that he could go out there and just be Justin Gaethje? Just being him, was that good enough? I don't know, but it's really weird to see it play out like this. And it just really made Khabib look like he was on a whole different level.
I would venture to say that it was actually getting in there with Khabib and actually feeling his strength and actually seeing him move in front of you that changed his mind. I mean, we've seen so many other people step into that cage with extreme confidence against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and we've seen that extreme confidence evaporate within seconds. Let's think back to Conor McGregor. Let's think back to Michael Johnson. Let's think back to Edson Barboza, Rafael dos Anjos. Like the list goes on and on out of very, very tough competitors, guys who are proven at a championship level, some of them at least, to then step in front of this man, feel what he has to offer, and not be able to do anything about it. And from there on, we see hesitancy. I think the Conor McGregor fight is probably the best example of this. You talk about extreme hatred between the two. You talk about extreme confidence on McGregor's side and stuffing that first takedown and then deciding, okay, now I'm going to show off and I'm going to try to take his back now. And we saw how everything just quickly unraveled from there. So I think this just for Gaethje, this just played out in a stylistic way that suits that same narrative. He felt what Khabib could do and realized that he was outmatched at that moment. And then we see the wheels start falling off. So fellas, now let's move on just a little bit from here, from the technique talk to actually what happens now, because we did have some semblance of what was going to happen if either man won this fight. Right now we have this sort of back and forth with the UFC and this Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier rematch that seems to be floating in the air for January possibly. We've got Tony Ferguson sitting there. We've got Michael Chandler, who actually had a pretty serious featured promo spot on this card. So the lightweight division has a lot of moving parts, but now the one thing that we probably should have thought of that we didn't quite happen, and now what do? Khabib's not in the picture. If we are to believe what he says, which I'm inclined to, as we all are. So now what? What does the 155-pound division look like, and where do we move on from here? What does the next title fight look like?
Well, I want to give a shout out to our buddy Tom Taylor over at bjpen.com. I think he had a fantastic idea, and it's such a good idea that the UFC will not do it, right? It's a 4-man tournament. We got Poirier and McGregor 2, and then the winner of that fight faces Chandler and Ferguson winner. I think that would be phenomenal, right? That's a good idea. But if we're not going to do that, then I would be lying. I would be absolutely lying if I said I did not want to see just go right to Chandler versus Gaethje next, even though Gaethje just lost dominantly. That fight for me, stylistically, I think is probably the most exciting matchup of all time. I love that matchup so much. At least the Gaethje of old before he went on his run, now when he's more calculated. But the War Gaethje versus Chandler, I love that matchup. I think it would still be good now, so I'd be all for that. I feel like there's no way that Chandler... I mean, this might actually help his case to get an immediate title shot. They are all in on Chandler, it seems like, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it against whoever. Maybe they could do Ferguson just because, I don't know, they just feel like it, you know. There's options, but realistically, I think the coolest thing would be to maybe do an unofficial tournament if you're not going to do, you know, actually call it that. But that would be fun to do for lightweight. I mean, everybody is so into this division all the time. Like, why not add this cool new element now that the unbeatable guy is gone? I think that would be awesome, but probably won't do it because it's such a unique idea. So yeah, there's plenty of options, but yeah, I don't know.
You know what? I do want to also definitely give credit to Tom Taylor, but I've got to give credit also to my homie Jason Burgos at SureDog, who actually texted me that same thing about 2 minutes before we went live. So the 4-man tournament, I really like that idea. Matthew Graham on the Facebook chat agrees as well. 4-way tournament, man. I think this is something that makes so much sense, and also it couldn't be that far away from the UFC's plans at some point down the line, because keep in mind, Khabib was actually planning to retire, according to his words, on his next fight. Like, he wanted to retire at 30-0. So at some point, the UFC was going to run into this wall where you no longer had a lightweight champion. So I like this iteration of the 4-way tournament between Dustin, Conor, Chandler, and Tony Ferguson. Are there any other names that we want to throw in that mix that could be interesting? I'll add Charles Oliveira. Could be an interesting addition to any sort of tournament.
Yeah, before we go too far down this path, one thing I do want to say is Drake is spot on in terms of whether they would do it or not, simply because, you know, this is kind of a nightmare scenario for the UFC in the sense that now they have a GSP situation that happened when GSP beat Hendricks and walked away. It's the same thing now, just at lightweight. So even if you do a tournament or something else, there's going to be that, you know, Khabib in the background, right? But I think before we go down the 4-man tournament path, which I love, I can't imagine it's going to happen, because I think this is going to be the opportunity the business wants to put Conor in a title fight and give him an immediate shot. There's a lot of juicy matchups there, especially now that Khabib's vacated. Why not go ahead and have the vacant title match versus Dustin Poirier? That sounds like heaven to the promotion. Then you've got McGregor back on top, holding the belt. You know, I can't imagine they don't do that at this point. I would love for a 4-man tournament. In terms of other names you could throw in there, you could throw Dan Hooker in there. He had a very close fight with Dustin Poirier, and he's really shown some growth. But I mean, that's not really... you could have as an alternate, probably. I don't know if you want to have Chandler... I'd love to see Chandler versus Hooker to fight their way into the tournament. I think that'd be awesome. Or have like even go 8. But other than that, I think we've covered the bases on that. But the promotion won't do it. They're going to give McGregor a title shot, hands down. I can't see any other.
This is it's a dream scenario for the UFC in the midst of 2 big stars, 2 big champions retiring. Henry Cejudo walks away after gaining momentum, at seemingly the worst time for the promotion. He walks away. So that's a blow to the UFC. Now Khabib gaining momentum, even though he's been dominant for forever. He's gaining more momentum after facing Conor and dominating Conor. He walks away. But at the same time, you got Conor scheduled for a fight upcoming. So now, hey, we lose two dominant champions recently, but hey, now we have a clear path to put Conor back into a title fight, because we were always talking about, hey, are they going to start at the 165-pound division for Conor so they can make that a title fight? They don't have to do that now. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, vacant title. There you go. It's easy. And this is exactly why, like you said, they're not going to do a tournament. I mean, it sounds fun. It sounds all well and good, but this type of marketing machine that the UFC has, they want to be able to promote Conor McGregor in a title fight at all costs. And I know for a fact that Conor McGregor would not be on board with entering a tournament to kind of prove his place amongst the division, because his argument is going to be, I'm 2-division champion in this company. I deserve a title fight, highest earning fighter, highest pay-per-view buys, all that jazz. They're going to throw him into a title fight. It's going to be announced probably next week.
Rob Iman on the YouTube chat chiming in with McGregor versus Poirier with fans in the seats for the belt. That sound, if the world can get to some level of normalcy by January, that sounds very feasible. Still don't think Cowboy Stadium is the right place in the midst of a pandemic, but that's neither here nor there. And so actually, before we continue down this path, because we do have a few other fights that we should talk about before this is all over with. Of course, you probably hear my son now, who's awake and ready to chime in with his opinions.
He's lamented that Conor fight. He's lamented it.
Yeah,
so sad.
He's sad about Khabib retiring. He's very sad about this. We have to talk about how bad that stoppage was in the Khabib fight. Jason Herzog, who normally an excellent referee, normally somebody who doesn't get mentioned a whole lot because he does the job the way a ref should, and that's by not becoming any part of the story whatsoever. He's just there to officiate the action quietly. Man, I could have sworn Justin Gaethje tried to tap like 4 separate occasions once that triangle choke was locked before it actually got separated. So what thoughts on that stoppage, gentlemen?
Yeah, that was very shocking. I didn't realize it was Herzog at first. That's I was like, this can't be him. That's totally out of character for him. Did he not put his contacts in for the fight or something? That was, I don't know how you missed that, man. It was so obviously multiple taps, and he tapped until he literally couldn't anymore. It was very, very bad, and just a mental lapse, I guess, for one of the best refs in the game. One of the most we don't hear much about him because he doesn't have many moments where things are bad in his fights, where he's making bad stoppages or anything like that. So very odd and out of character. Not ready to crucify him just yet, because this is one time, the only real bad Herzog stoppage I can ever remember. I mean, yeah, he's been a model of consistency. No one brings him up as the best or anything, but he's definitely up there if you think about it. So just very odd. I thought it was Anders Olsen who let Kutelaba die a little bit earlier in the night, but no, not the case.
I think it's one of those things where Herzog has been consistent, but especially on Fight Island, he's had some issues. I'm not sure. I was trying to look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure he was the ref for Anthony Smith versus Teixeira, yes? And he also had another fight on Fight Island that was a little bit controversial with a groin shot that was missed and that led to a finish eventually. I forget which one that is.
Herman.
He's normally, as Drake said, a very consistent, good referee. Even in the Anthony Smith fight, I believe he made a public apology saying, hey, that was my fault. Like, I should have stopped that. That was a mistake. But lately, he's had some issues. And this was pretty egregious. During the fight, I was like, how did he not see it? And then, once it was all over, I thought, okay, maybe he was in the wrong angle. But then in the replay, he's right there. I don't know how you miss. You just have to see one of the at least 4 or 5 taps that Gaethje did, and then he goes out, and that's it's just poor refereeing, and I don't know what's going on with Herzog lately. I don't know if it's Fight Island, maybe it's the sleep schedule, something's up there.
I mean,
could be, but yeah,
Herzog
I don't
must
know.
be smoking that Herb Dean. So let's go ahead and move discussion along a little bit. And Matt, it looks like you got something to say. I don't want to cut you
No,
off.
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we're all forgetting that Herzog did get kicked in the head by Tai Tuivasa earlier in the evening. So, I mean, obviously his judgment was off.
All right, fair point there. So let's move along here because we can talk about the implications for the lightweight division and the legacy of Khabib Nurmagomedov all day long. But we do have other fights to get to, namely the co-main event, also a fight that has something to do with the title picture. That is the former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker, who styled all over Jerry Cannonier to earn a decision. 29-28 on my scorecard. Or was it 30-27? Something like that. Either way, Robert Whittaker very clearly won that fight. I actually picked Cannonier to win this. I thought the flaws that Whittaker has shown in some of his more recent performances would come back to haunt him again with Cannonier's power and with his ever-improving style. What were your initial thoughts when you saw what the former champion was able to do to the crystal lover, Jerry Cannonier?
Listen, I was actually pleasantly surprised in a way. I mean, I wanted to see Cannonier win and get his title opportunity because, you know, I've been rocking with Jerry Cannonier for a long time now. But the way that Whittaker came out and kind of went back to that lower, you know, lead, like front arm, like ready to jab style that he came into the UFC with, he went back more to that. That was something that he kind of went away from in recent fights, but he went back to that because he needed to have that arm low and ready to fire that jab in there. And that's what he did really well against Cannonier, a guy who was a powerhouse, right? As we saw, like in that third round, after getting just beat pillar to post pretty much, he still landed one hard right hand and had Whittaker rocked. So that was something that they brought in with a really, really smart game plan. Stick and move, stay out of his range. Don't let him put combinations together. Be the guy that's in and out and on the move. And they really showed that, hey, they have great game planning ability, and Whittaker is just a championship level fighter. And that's what we learned tonight, that Cannonier is just a step behind that. It's something that he can fix, but it's going to be a long path to get back in that title picture for him right now. But Whittaker looked amazing. I mean, you just got to give him all the credit in the world. I mean, he absolutely showed that he's ready for another crack at Adesanya tonight.
Let's talk about that a little bit now. Obviously, that seems to be the most clear fight for the middleweight title. I mean, had Cannonier won, he would have been a shoo-in for that next shot, and there's no other clear contender other than Robert Whittaker. Now, in my personal opinion, I believe this makes the Jones Adesanya fight more possible. Does Israel Adesanya want to fight a man that he absolutely wiped the floor with in very recent memory, or does he want to challenge himself with a grudge match against someone with the legacy of John Jones?
Well, first of all, just to go back to that fight real quickly, I was very impressed with Cannonier in there, honestly. I mean, Cannonier's been on a run, but you got to remember that run is David Branch, who washed out of the UFC, a 44-year-old Anderson Silva who got injured, and Jack Hermanson, who's not bad, but has had struggles before, almost got finished by Taos Leites, 3 or 4 fights ago. So I was very impressed with what Cannonier did there. But Robert Whittaker, Mr. Bobby Knuckles, Mr. The Reaper, you're talking about a guy that's 11-1 and his only loss is to Adesanya. And I would actually argue that Adesanya, yes, won clearly. There's no doubt about that. But that first round, until the knockdown happened, Whittaker was winning. I would say that. And it's not a Whittaker fight unless he gets knocked down or hurt. That's just, I can't list the amount of times Derek Brunson, Till, Romero 1, Romero 2. That's what Whittaker does, is he gets hit in the face and gets hurt at some point. But at this point, I would not reframe your question to be, is it Adesanya wants to fight him? I'm not sure Whittaker wants to fight Adesanya. I think he likes not having the pressure. He didn't call out like, "Oh, I demand a title shot," any of that stuff. He's not like, "I'm coming back for my belt." He, even in the run up to this fight, he's just like, "Yeah, living my life, having fun on my farm, like what I'm doing." I don't know that he wants that pressure. I get the impression from all of his interviews, he likes not having the pressure. He likes not having all of that stuff going on with him, where he likes to be able to just fight and do what he loves. So I'm not sure he wants that. And that, for those reasons, I think it makes the Adesanya-Jones fight even more possible, because I'm not 100% that Whittaker wants to fight Izzy again. Will he? Sure. But it doesn't, there was no urgency on his part that like, oh, I got to step in there, and fight Adesanya again. And as you said, does Adesanya really want to fight Whittaker again after really cleaning his clock? It's more tempting for him to go up. So I think now more than ever, that's the time. And the leg kick disagrees with me. Says Adesanya was winning the Whittaker fight the entire time. You're wrong. You're wrong. The leg kick. But I would be. Let's go ahead and open it up. Maybe my colleagues feel differently. Let's see. What do you guys think?
I think that Adesanya was winning every moment of the Whittaker fight as well. So yeah, I didn't see a moment in there for Whittaker.
Yeah, I'm gonna hang you out to dry on this one, Pat. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
the fight
more competitive than maybe people remember, but Whittaker, yeah, I don't think he was necessarily doing better.
All right, so let's throw this question out there for the people. All right, right there, my informal poll. Do you agree with me, or are you wrong? Did Israel Adesanya win every moment of the Whittaker fight? All right. So
watch the first 4 minutes, not the last minute, and then tell me. That's all. Just force forward. Just stop. That's all.
My son disagrees with you. But let's move on from this one. We've taken a lot of time just going over the main event, so now we gotta kind of cut off some of the talk on some of the other fights. And anything that you guys want to hear discussed further, just leave some comments. Hit us up. You got the Twitter handles right here on your screen. We can do supplemental videos as things continue, but I've got a serious clock counting down right here. So, all right. So now next up on the docket here, Alexander Volkov with a body kick to finish the night for Walt Harris in the second round. I thought that this was a fight that Walt Harris could win, much like the Cannonier and Whittaker pairing. The more technical guy can make the mistakes that the more powerful guy can capitalize off. And I thought that's what was going to happen here today. Definitely not. Definitely not. Walt Harris looked pretty out of sorts, despite coming in better shape than we've seen him before. I know that was a talking point on the broadcast, and physically he looked the part. He looked like he trained very, very hard for this one. He just seemed a step slower. He just seemed a step behind from everything an experienced kickboxer like Alexander Volkov could do. And let's not forget that Volkov had probably one of the sickest tattoos in MMA history with that back piece right there. So gentlemen, what did you think about this fight? Did this play out to the expectations you had when this matchup was announced?
I mean, I think it went about as I expected it to. I mean, it was kind of hard to tell recently with Volkov because of kind of I think the stylistic matchups that he's had recently kind of have not given him the chance to show and remind us how good that he really is. Like, I love watching Volkov strike. When he is on, it is a sight to behold, heavyweight. And tonight, I think how Harris kind of brought the fight to him, let him, do what he's best at, which is, get in there, throw those knees in tight, just kind of stalk him a little bit, but still he had to avoid the power, of course. And I mean, man, ended up finding that sniper of a teep, man. That thing was just pinpoint beautiful to put Harris away. And awkwardly, it seemed like the commentary thought it was a groin shot, but it was pretty clear the whole time, I thought. But yeah, it went about as I thought it would. I mean, Volkov, he's fought better competition, just has more experience overall in MMA, so I kind of favored him the whole way through. But yeah, it was very similar to Whittaker and Cannonier in the sense that, very dangerous, can put your lights out with one shot if he connects. We've seen Volkov go down before, of course, by knockout. I mean, it's heavyweight, but still, So yeah, I wasn't too surprised by the outcome. Maybe the fact that it made it out of the first round. I mean, I kind of had a sense that there would be a moment in the first round where things got a little bit crazier, but nonetheless, I'm not too surprised. When Volkov's on, he's very tough to beat.
So let's send another reminder out. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Throw some questions in here in the comments, and we'll do our best to address them. Drake, as far as the confusion between the body shot, which could have been interpreted as a growing shot to a lot of people, I believe the correct term is guts or nuts. Pat, what were you thinking watching this? Did you think that that Alexander Volkov put on one of the better performances of his career? This is something that he can sustain trying to rise up the heavyweight ranks.
Yeah, I think he definitely put on one of his better performances. And also shout out to the comments, because the main thing I was thinking is, where did that tattoo come from? And it looks phenomenal. So yeah, I think, you've got salon quality hair, Dustin Poirier. You've got bald Ortega, and now you've got tattoo Volkov, because he looked great. And I expected Volkov to outpoint Harris here. I thought that was going to happen unless Harris landed a big strike, but he was so on. As Drake said, those strikes were phenomenal. And to get the body shot finish after hurting Harris with a headshot in the first round, Volkov looked like a heavyweight reborn. So I'm going back tattoo Volkov all day long. That's what I'm saying.
Matt, anything you want to add about this fight?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was exactly what I expected from Volkov if he was on, like you guys said, right? If he was on, he looks like one of the best heavyweights in the world. Let's not forget he was beating Derek Lewis pillar to post until Derek Lewis knocked him out cold in the final 11 seconds. So that would have been a major win. We would be talking about him in the title picture right now if that shot in the pan didn't happen, right? So, and then of course he comes back and loses to Curtis Blades, but he is very much one of the best heavyweights in this division. If he's on, and I love how he uses his range very effectively, contrast to another very tall heavyweight we saw earlier in the evening that never seems to use his range effectively. So if Volkov is grooving and he's moving, he's sticking and moving, and he's tough to beat, man. He's really, really good. Unfortunately for Walt Harris, a guy that we all want to see get a win because of what happened to him in his personal life. We want to see him have success. Unfortunately, he just keeps getting these matchups, man, where it's tough outs. And he took one hell of a kick right to the solar plexus, as they say, right in the gut as he was exhaling too. So those are the type of shots that just really mess your whole system up. Like you can't. There's no poker face for that. Like you have to exhale. Like you have to try to get your breath back in. You have to let out that verbal like that. You can't hide that. There's a lot of things you can poker face when it comes to MMA. You can poker face a leg kick that hurts like hell. You can poker face getting jabbed right in the nose. Your eyes will water up a little bit, but you can pretend it doesn't hurt. That kind of strike right there, like you can't play that one off.
Absolutely. So moving on from that fight, not a whole lot we can say about this fight because it just didn't really last very long. Phil Hawes absolutely floored Jacob Volkan, a KO within. I'm not the time seems to be the official time is messing up here on my screen, but what was 18. The official time? 18 seconds. Yeah, there was
18 seconds.
Absolutely no time. Not a whole lot we can say about that fight, but I will say this though. Phil Hawes making his promotional debut on a pay-per-view main card, one of the premier pay-per-views of the year so far. I think it's safe to say the UFC is very high on what this man has to offer. They are very confident in his potential. Anybody that you see that makes sense for him to fight coming up next?
The Buckley Wright winner. Why not?
You know what? That's kind of exactly what I was hoping to hear. I mean, to take advantage of the now viral moment of Buckley's ridiculous KO or forever candidate that he pulled off. Was that last week or the week before? And pairing that with the absolute ridiculous knockout that we saw to kind of put a cherry on top of this event. So that matchup sounds good. I think that's considering they're both contender series guys or guys that are just coming up. Put them together. Maybe something explosive happens. I like it.
Oh, that's a
Kind of
fantastic
crazy.
fantastic matchup.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy that he didn't get performance of the night for that either.
Oh yeah, you know what? We didn't even read the performance of the night bonuses. I have not seen those yet. Drake, do you have those in front of you? Can you read them out?
Yes. So performance of the night, of course, Khabib. I don't know if that's very surprising. And then Magomed Ankalaev got the other one, and fight of the night went to Nathaniel Wood and Casey Kenny. Yeah, that is those.
All right, thank you for that.
We could have handed out 4 performance of the nights for this one though, but that was a solid fight. So
absolutely, that was an amazing fight. So let's breeze through these last 2 on the main card, and then we can highlight a few things from the prelims before we wrap it up. Lauren Murphy with a second round submission over Lilia Shakirov. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now Lauren Murphy cements her place in the flyweight title picture. Kind of the fight I expected to happen. Lilia was coming in on short notice. Her UFC debut, she's not necessarily had the best of competition leading up to this. Lauren Murphy did what she was supposed to do, in my opinion. If this fight went any other way, I would be questioning Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, that was definitely what she was supposed to do in that fight. But at the same time, it's just been bad luck for Lauren Murphy in the sense that, Andrade comes up to the division, does what she does, and then she loses Calvillo, which if Calvillo still would have been in there, would have been a lot better if she could have went in there and added that win to her first winning streak rather than, Lilia, who's coming in making her debut. Nobody really knows about her. Good prospect, don't get us wrong there, but I mean, it's just not the same. And she goes out there and does what she's supposed to do, but I think that she really needed to. She was winning the whole time, right? But she really needed to go out there and just completely dominate, just beat the shit out of her to really kind of make her case for any chance of getting it over Andrade. Because even though she still got this great win here, 4 fights in a row now that she's won, looking better than ever Lauren Murphy is, it's hard to think that the UFC will go with her over Andrade. It sucks, from a purist standpoint, and that I have this mindset of, somebody who's actually doing work in the division instead of the person who just came in. Even though they took out the number 1 ranked person and finished him in the first round, it's still she's been working for this. So I don't know. It's tough. I don't know. Do you guys think she did enough?
Not to leapfrog Andrade, in my opinion. I mean, leapfrogging a former champion, especially a former champion with that sort of fight style, against a dominant champion like Valentina Shevchenko, I think the UFC just does that fight because that's aesthetically supposed to be the most pleasing one, and then Lauren Murphy can take on the winner of that. I think that's probably the smoothest way to make that transition. Pat, Matt, any sort of suggestions here? And Pat, Matt, that rhyme. Ooh, feel me. Continue.
Hey, look at you. No, Lauren Murphy could have gone out there and had a Buckley KO and still wouldn't have leapfrogged Andrade. You're facing a UFC debuting fighter. It doesn't matter what she would have done out there. There's no way she was jumping in that line based on the things that you've said. Andrade Valentina just makes too much sense. So yeah. I mean, you can, if you want to put her right behind there as the fighting the winner of that, if Valentina loses, obviously they're going to run that back, but she's right there. But there's nothing she could have done to leapfrog that, I don't think.
I would disagree and say I think if she had a crazy KO or something that, really put the exclamation point on there, maybe they would have done her versus Andrade for a number 1 contender match. Or if the timing didn't work out right, if Andrade said, no, I can't do a fight hand, cool, Lauren Murphy right there. But otherwise, yeah, I'm in agreement where, Shakirova's last opponent is 1-3 in her professional MMA career. If Lauren Murphy didn't walk through her, then you had a whole question of, is the flyweight division even, that good in the UFC, given that somebody, was coming in here and just knocking off a top 5 girl when her last opponent was 1-3. So Murphy's either got to wait or take another contender fight. But yeah, I don't think it's enough to leapfrog Andrade at all.
So I'll leave it with this, gentlemen. I think the most pressing question that we're left with this fight, when Lilia Shakirova, wow, I'm screwing that up. When she comes back to the UFC, will she still be sporting the same haircut?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she's always had that.
I certainly hope so. I'd be very disappointed if she didn't. All right, so let's move on from there for the opening fight of the main card. Magomed Ankalaev and Ion Cutelaba finally meet up again. This was becoming the poor man's Khabib Tony, but now they finally got the rematch. Cutelaba did not need his acting skills to fake a knockout because this time he was clearly knocked out 4 minutes and 19 seconds into the first round. Ankalaev establishing himself as a force to be reckoned with in a growing field of light heavyweight contenders. I'm getting more and more excited about the 205-pound division right now. It just seems like, especially now with the exit of John Jones, that we have this new life. Like, all these contenders have a chance now to kind of capture our imaginations and move forward and push this division back at least close to the glory days of the past of 205. Fellas, where do we think the ceiling is on Ankalaev right now?
I think the ceiling is probably him getting submitted at 4:59 by Paul Craig. No.
Oh,
Sorry, I had to throw it out there. No, I think the ceiling's very high. I think, this was one of those matchups where that first fight, regardless of what Cutelaba was saying, if he was faking it or not, I mean, Ankalaev was still clearly dominating. I expected this fight to kind of go this way. I want to see him have a step up in competition. I'd love to see him get a top 10 guy, really see where his ceiling is at, because he's mostly fought prospects and ran through them. And even then, the Paul Craig fight, he was winning until the very last second. Like, that was pure domination until the last second there. And shout out to Luke Baker in the chat, because I love the idea of Ankalaev versus Walker. I might even want to go a little bit higher than that in terms of a test for Ankalaev, but I'm also okay with Walker, who has been in the top 15 or flirted with the top 15 for most of his career. But I think it's time for the UFC to really test what his ceiling is.
Rob Iman of the Iman Report also echoing the sentiments of Ankalaev versus Walker and throwing out Cutelaba versus Ryan Spann as well. I think that's a matchup that makes a lot of sense. Both guys coming up off of the kind of low points of their UFC tenure so far. I do like those matchups, and I am excited for 205. Now, we have come to the conclusion of the wrap-up of the main card. If you have any questions about anything, just throw them in the chat. Hopefully we can get to them and address those. But let's give a moment, each person on the panel here, take a moment to highlight one moment or one fight, just something from the prelim card that really stood out to you. Pat, I'll start with you. What's a prelim moment you want to highlight here?
I mean, a prelim moment I want to highlight here is it's time for Stefan Struve to hang him up. I mean, I thank you, betting odds, for giving me the odds you did on Tuivasa to beat Struve, because I thought it was just too easy there. That plus Ankalaev winning was great for me. But Tuivasa struggled, but he had fought JDS, he'd fought Ivanov to a split decision. He wasn't out there struggling. Struve has just had, ever since he came back from retirement, has just looked awful. As he looked okay against Rothwell until the nut shots and then the loss. He looked okay in this fight, but he still can't figure out his range, as Mr. Wells alluded to earlier. It's time to hang him up. There's no need for him to take extra damage. That to me was just like, I had really high hopes for Struve way back in the day. I'm sad he is where he is, but he needs to retire. I don't want to see him go out there and get knocked out anymore. So that's my highlight. Not a great one to start with, but I'm sorry. I can't. It's got to stop. He's got to hang him up.
Yeah, that was pretty dreadful performance on his part. You talk about somebody who has a lot of physical gifts that would suit them well in combat sports, and someone who simply has squandered those gifts. I on Twitter earlier today during the fight, or right after the fight wrapped up, I mean, my first thought was this is one of the biggest waste of potential in MMA history. I couldn't be more disappointed by what has happened with Stefan Struve, and we've seen what he's capable of at his best in the one time he used his reach properly, and that was to knock out the eventual champion Stipe Miocic and the consensus greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Matt, what is a prelim moment that you'd like to highlight for us here?
Listen, as you guys know, if you're new to the channel, it's the Body Lock, but it's also AKA CNN, the Chimaev News Network, right? We may have to throw in another one, the RNN, for Shavkat Rakhmonov. This dude is amazing. He is amazing. He very well could be the next biggest thing behind Chimaev. That's a guy you need to pay attention to. To go out there and tap Alex Oliveira like that, a guy who's really rangy. Contrary, you want to talk about a guy who uses his range really well, contrary to Stefan Struve. Alex Oliveira is that guy that is really long. He darts in and out. He's a pain in the ass to deal with. And Rakhmonov made that look easy for the most part. And Oliveira didn't look off of his game either. That just shows you the difference in skills and how much better I think that Rakhmonov is. This guy is a guy that everybody needs to be paying attention to. Next time he gets scheduled for a fight, you better not miss it, because he is the type of guy that I think we could be talking about knocking on the door of the top 15 after his next fight, just like we are with Chimaev. So that's my biggest takeaway from the prelims, outside of obviously Stefan Struve, being Stefan Struve.
You heard it here first from Matt Wells. Rakhmonov versus Leon Edwards, same night that he fights Chimaev. It's going down. Breaking news here on the Body Lock. Drake, what is a prelim moment that you want to highlight for us today?
So I want to say I absolutely love your guys' choices. I think those are phenomenal choices. For me, I'll be different, and I will go with the ladies. Miranda Maverick beating Liana Jojua. I mean, not surprising that she was expected to win that fight. Absolutely. If you knew who Maverick was, absolutely a top prospect at 125. But goes out there and really puts on a striking clinic for the most part, which is something we do not normally see from her. She's known to, impose her will on the ground as well as mix it up on the feet too. But she didn't even bother to attempt or hint at a takedown in this fight. So very well done from her. And then, of course, the questionable stoppage between rounds after the cut from the beautiful uppercut elbow that Maverick hit her with just seconds before the round. So that is something controversial and questionable, but either way, I don't think that Jojua was going to pull that off outside of a Hail Mary type of submission. And then I will give you guys a low light that I have from Struve and Tuivasa as well. Tuivasa and the Nelk boys doing shoeies during a global pandemic. Those sick bastard fucks. How dare they? Sickening.
like if you want to explain like how we are where we are with this pandemic in 2020, look no further than the clip of them doing a shoey in the back. Like, what?
And Dana just watches over it.
Just go ahead, slurp all the COVID up. I don't even know what to say about that. My highlight moment from the prelims. I guess it kind of bleeds over into the main card too, but the officiating seemed to be particularly trash today. The aforementioned stoppage in the ladies' fight on the prelim card. That cut was bad, but that's not a fight-ending cut. That is what was being described on Twitter as a quote-unquote girl stoppage. That I don't think a men's fight would have been stopped like that. Also, let's point out that rogue 30-27 scorecard on the Nathaniel Wood and Casey Kenny fight. Excellent fight. I do think that was a fight where you could have some interpretation, some leeway in the scorecards, but 30-27, nah, fam, I'm not buying it. And let's see, one other thing I do want to highlight here. Speaking of COVID, actually, the UFC did a fantastic job of just not mentioning the coronavirus at all, although it had such a footprint on this event. Beyond the fact that they were continually memorializing Khabib's father, rightfully so, didn't mention at all why he is no longer with us. Then also mentioning Ali Abdelaziz, he's watching somewhere in the world. It was the quote that Anik used. He's watching from a hospital room, actually, because he has COVID. So getting that out there. Oh, and by the way, that's the whole reason why Fight Island exists. So there it is. Just not exactly.
No way.
Yeah, just pretending like this event took place in some sort of vacuum outside of the world that we all live in. But anyway, I think that will do it, at least for our portion of this. We'll scroll down the chat, see if there's any questions whatnot that we missed. Jake, who is behind the scenes right now, if you can just throw up a couple questions on the screen that you think we should address before we head out of here. I see Luke Baker did some, okay, discuss the judging in the Wood Kenny fight from Rashad Jew. Yeah, that was not the business. I mean, at least the right man won. Casey Kenny did deserve the win in that fight. And it was an excellent fight, quite deserving a fight of the night, but I can't agree with that 30-27 scorecard at all. Fellas, any thoughts on that particular scorecard?
I agree with you 100%. It was a 29-28 fight for Kenny. I mean, I thought it was a pretty straightforward way to judge that fight, and anything else was kind of crazy. And it was, like you said, the right man won. But when it's a unanimous decision and you have that wild 30-27 in there, kind of like early on in the fight or in the fight card, it kind of gives you like pause, like this could come up again later on in the evening in a more prominent fight. So luckily it didn't, because everybody, got finishes for the most part. But yeah, that was a weird score to throw out there.
Yeah, for everybody who all the media members who try to submit scores for MMA decisions, we didn't have a lot of work to do today. It was a pretty easy night on that front. A question from Luke Baker. I know we did address this a little bit earlier, but I think it's worth revisiting just for a moment here. He asked, what about Michael Chandler? Michael Chandler was prominently featured on the broadcast. I haven't seen the UFC, at least I can't remember seeing the UFC feature a new signee who is not booked to fight someone that prominently on a broadcast since CM Punk. And that was, I think, UFC 181 or something like that. I mean, that was a long time.
That's when he fought.
When they announced it, that he was going to fight. So I think it's good that they're giving a real promotional push to Chandler, despite the fact that we did go into an extensive conversation about a potential 4-man tournament that the UFC just is too bullheaded to actually pull off. I'd like to see Chandler versus Nate Diaz. I think that's probably the best fight to introduce Chandler to the UFC fans. So, fellas, any parting thoughts about Michael Chandler?
I want the Gaethje fight, so I think make that a main event, since we do all know that they will slap the belt on Poirier and McGregor too. So why not give these guys 5 rounds? I absolutely need to see that, or I will be more upset than I've ever been. I need Gaethje versus Chandler.
So one thing that was addressed on here, Rob Iman put a rumor has it the Fight Island will be open to fans early 2021. I think that was essentially confirmed on the broadcast. I don't remember those words being left out there explicitly, but the stadium that's being built on Yas Island got a huge feature piece on the pay-per-view. So I think we'll be having fans there as soon as the world allows it to take place. All right, so I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Body Lock Post-Fight Show. Definitely remember to like and subscribe, share it, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay tuned to the Body Lock. We've got a ton of coverage. We hit all the topics that you guys want to talk about, and if there's anything in particular you want to hear about, you know how to reach out to us. Tweet us, hit up these comments, the emails. You know the routine. Reach out to us. We'll make it happen. So he is Pat OJ. He's Drake Riggs. And he is Matt Wells. I am Ant Walker. Thank you for tuning in. Stay beautiful. Stay positive.